Okay, this is a demo of Combat Groups extension in Fantasy Grounds Unity, sold on the Forge by Grim Press. I am running with 5e campaign with 2014 basic rule modules. I've got a client on the left and a host on the right. There are 3 PCs being controlled by the client. I'm just going to give some overview and then some details. The overview of Combat Trackers is that it's designed to allow you to limit what you see in everyone's combat tracker, and also limit what only players see. The reason this was implemented was to allow you to set up a session by essentially going out and before the session starts, say you want to create a group. These are the buttons and fields that Combat Groups put out. Currently, when I go into this field, this is for editing the names by keying them in, running, and creating. For right now, I'm just going to key in the word PCs and hit return. That creates a group now. These are the list of all my groups in this campaign. Nothing's in here right now, but I'm going to go ahead and add my PCs into it. And I'm doing this all manually right now. I'll get into other details later. And right now, those 3 I've put into the PC group, my PCs. I'm also going to create another group here just to clean up the rest. NPCs and vehicles. Now, rather than going into that, I'm going to go ahead and add them all in. If I add in this button, then all non-green factions will be added in. You can see which ones they are by me just clicking the visibility. And if I want all of them, I'd click Friends, and then every NPC in the other. So I've got 2 groups now. One with NPCs and vehicles, and you can see them reflecting on both sides, the client and the host. And by default, the host is currently set up, or the client is currently set up to only show the same factions on their CT. I'll get into that in a second. So pretend you don't have a client currently, and what you'll have is you're in the session, you're setting it up, you've got all these things defined, and you just turn them off and say, okay, I'm ready to start my session. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off everything and create a new group called Orcs, right? And I'm going to go ahead and go in here, grab a few Orcs. Oops, Orc. And just put them in. Maybe 4. And I'll say I'm going to set them up over in this room, someplace that hasn't been explored yet. And I'll show you different ways of doing this, but right now this is just a simple overview. So I go ahead and turn off the Orcs. I'm done setting them up. I haven't put anybody in. So I add them all in, and I'm done with Orcs. Now I'm going to do, let's say, Kobolds. Right, same thing. We get some Kobolds. Again, plural. Kobold. You get 5 of those or something. Again, I'm doing this manually, so let's go ahead and just add them all in. We're going to go ahead and put them in the map. I don't have to, obviously, but part of my setup is I'm actually setting up the rooms surrounding my players that they might enter or do the whole thing. Now, what you have to keep in mind is everything I'm putting in here is still in the CT. Okay? It's in the database. There's nothing you're saving in terms of space in the database. You add more and more in, you're eventually going to, flood it. But what it does do is it limits what you see in the PC, and that can actually let you fit a lot more on your map and everything else in terms of lag and such. So I would set up all the rooms around here, and for now I'm just going to do these two. And so we go back and we're ready to play, and it's the PCs are up, right? And let's say they've also got the NPCs and vehicles that are in the room, but of course they're not going to see things that aren't part of their party, part of their faction, because that's what I've set up. Now, essentially what that means is you can set up a whole bunch of things and not have it clutter. And as you run into them, let's say, this guy's running in, he opens the door. He's not aware of anybody there, right? I'm going to go ahead and pull out here. Pull up Rangy. Just going to double click on them here. That's another thing. If you double click on any of the icons, it'll select and show you them. And because, you own things, they have different vision, whoever's got the selection, right? It's their vision. So right now, we're going to assume Rangy's up. I'm not doing the turns at the moment. They'd also select them and have them pop up. But as you see, he doesn't see anybody yet. He's unaware and goes in there. And oh, well, there's something you also have to remember. When you go in and set these things up, you may or may not want to make them visible. I basically like to have them all visible when I set up a thing, because then I'm limiting the other part of combat groups is the players only see what they see. LOS and lighting actually has meaning in my games because I don't have to manually turn visibility on and off and manage it in the map. They simply don't see it unless they walk in, right? So he walks in, sees a bunch of guys, and he can start targeting them. They can start targeting him. And if I wish to use them on here, I just pop them in when I feel a need for it. But I could also just run them from their sheets or stuff. But typically I run them from the CT. And that's basically how that works and how the purpose of combat groups. I'd want no player to ever see anything that is not visible. That means if you set them invisible, I don't want to have to manage them here with CT visibility. So essentially, by not having them show here, they're surprised and they only can target things on the map. And that's how I play. So there's two phases to combat group. One is allowing you to set up a whole bunch of things and, have them pop in and out as you want. And the other is to limit the user's visibility. Now, you don't have to have the options I'm having that limit their visibility. I just would never play without them. It seems like cheating to me. Okay, so you pretty much should have an idea. And some of these buttons, like the hide all NPCs in a combat group. So if I have orcs, right, let's go ahead and say he's actually in the room. He sees them all. But if I actually hide all the things on this button will apply to the active group. So if I say hide, they're gone. Unhide, they're back. That's just a simple way. I could have done that rather than show you me clicking them all on and off. That's just a tool. It's up to you to use the tool. If I'm at the visibility, you can also hold Shift and double click, or just click rather, and it'll turn off all the other ones. Where I hold Control and it'll turn them all on, just like the tooltip tells you. That's just a tool. Like if I want to save time, right? I want everybody on but those guys. It's more like if I were here and I wanted the PCs only on, I'd hold Shift and hit Visible if I wanted everybody on. But the PCs, I'd hit Control. That's a tool you can use. It's very powerful and handy, but you'll have to figure out how you want to do it. Let's see what else. And I held Shift there to turn them invisible, turn everything invisible. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Control. Have everybody show up. This is what is actually in the CT, right? Pretty big, but who wants to manage all that? Don't want those guys. Don't want those guys. There's the current room I'm in, assuming that this guy's back over there and the door's closed. Now, there's also this thing. You can double click on this and it'll go look in orcs and center it on the map as best it can. This doesn't always work. I'm not going to explain why, but if you double click on the group, it'll try and figure out the window area of it and center it and zoom in around it. That's also handy. The add, like I showed you already, the delete from the CT will delete everything out of this group. So let's say I'm done with kobolds. I don't want them. I made a mistake. I don't really want them. I hit the delete. They're all gone. I delete the thing out. The group's gone. Right? And one thing I should warn you about, never use the menu commands down here. If you delete everything from the tracker, it doesn't care whether you see it or not. It deletes everything. So say you go spend hours setting up hundreds of NPCs in this dungeon. You've got everything populated. You've got everything just how you want it. And then you come down here and hit delete from tracker. You lost it all. That's why you only delete things out of here. Unless you're literally wiping your dungeon. That goes for, all these things. You use these to control the group up here. If you go into something else to try and control the group, you're actually not controlling combat groups. You're controlling the combat tracker database. Okay, what else here? I think that covers all these buttons and what they do. This button here, let's go ahead and say I've got the PCs here. I'm going to go ahead and grab an asset, a picture of the entire group, and save it into the screen and drop it in here, and I'm able to put it on the map. Now, some of the images here, currently using, we'll use this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, this is the map where we're currently living, right? There's our group. We can move around in this map. We play in this map. It's basically the overview of the map. And we're going to go down into this dungeon here, and then we're going to have everybody come in. But if I want an overview map or anything that you can imagine you're doing, you have that token to the group. You can just double click on it here, and it'll bring it up and center it. There we are. What use you have for that? My use is if I have a bigger map where they're going into smaller areas, I'll have them just move around as a group icon, and it's assigned to the group. And then when they actually go into the PC thing, right, then I just double click on this and we're in there. Or I drag them in through this faction friend and drop them into the map. That's just all how these top parts work and help you manage what you see and what they see on the player side. So let's go ahead and go into ownership. Now, ownership, if the options set, will show here. And of course, if the options set, you'll see who the group is and who owns them. Now, this NPC is actually owned from Assistant GM in a previous demo. So the mule is owned by Silent Rune here, and he'd be able to, pick them, move them around. And I can see who owns what just by holding my cursor over here. And this is all the default settings I deliver with. I'm going to go over all the options in just a minute. I think that's all the basics I wanted to show. Yeah, scary, right? Basics. So now I'm going to go ahead and show some other things. These are the options. First option is always show own tokens on CT client. Let's say I take the mule and I make him a different faction. Okay. Now, he's neutral right now. And when I look at this, he's still on this thing. It's not the same faction. Well, everybody on a client, when they own somebody, automatically gets added in because they own them. I can turn that option here off. Then, you only see what you see. But this option, which is defaulted on, also ensures that all the combat trackers of a player see everything they own, whether it's visible or not in the other rules. And that's what that first option does. Let's go to the second option here. The second option is encounters. Now, it became kind of painful when I had a ton of things and I was running out of room in the database when I was doing big dungeons, and I didn't want to have to figure it all out. So what I did is I made it so that I'm going to hold the shift key down here. I got the orcs, and I said, well, you know what? Let's say they were put in some distant part of the map or some other map that I was setting up for the session, and I didn't actually want to have it in. What I can do is I can go to the encounters, and as long as this option is either on or on with map link, which is the default, it will be able to create an encounter. The CG encounter button will be there. And what it's going to do is when I click on this button, it's going to look at the active encounter, right? And put everybody into in here. So if you look at that, and he's also, because that said with map link, it's also got everything remembered where he was. So essentially what I can do is I can just say, okay, I'm done with that guy. And I leave the group there usually. And, I'll be back to playing around, and all of a sudden these guys will run into him, and I'll say, okay, let's go into our encounter and add to tracker, right? Boom. Instantly added, instantly in the map, and there's another option for adding things in, but I can just add him back in there, and he's there. Okay, and that's essentially what's going on here. I'm going to turn off the order. And so you can create encounters and then put them back out into the map as you move along, in addition to just, saying, okay, they're visible or they're not. Okay, or they're invisible or they're not, right? So that's pretty much that. And so you can have all sorts of controls going on. The next one is disable combat list icon. Now, that is going to require a restart. And it's this annoying thing here, this list button. In my games, I always have it on. In other words, this button will not be available to the client or me. I have no purpose for this, and I don't want it. So that's what that one does. Display group map token. Well, when I put him over, you can see he's PCs, he's NPCs and vehicles. And a lot of times, since I might be naming these groups in a way that I don't want displayed because it gives away some information, then I just turn off the runtime thing. It won't display those groups. Now, it does still display the owner, but that's another option I'll get to. So typically, when I'm doing session prep, I always have that on. when I'm playing. Sometimes I'll turn it off. Display the owner NPC group. Well, if you put a mouse over an NPC that you own, you want to see that highlighted range, right? That's essentially going to require you to reopen it if you change that and try and turn that off. I don't see ever needing that off. You would always want that on. Display owner on map. Same deal as the other one, right? Sometimes you don't want to show what the owner is, but I always do. It's just easier for me to say, oh, look, that's who owns it. Encounter placed in active group name. Now, as you saw when I placed that encounter the first time, let's go back to orcs. We'll just delete them all. So there's nobody in orcs right now. I'm going to go ahead and turn off everybody. I'm holding the shift key when I do that. Shift control does groups. Just clicking it does whatever you got. There's nobody in there right now. So let's go ahead and go to orcs and add to the tracker. Now, what I've set here though is encounter placed in active groups. I'm now going to set that to on. So whatever group is currently active, in this case orc, when I add this to it, right? He's in there. He added him in, and I had him invisible at the time. And that's it. Now, he's put him in all invisible, right? And again, you don't use this because this would hide everything in your entire map. Don't use the menu. Don't use this global thing. You stick to this to apply it to there. Because if you do this, that's everything, even the ones you don't see, because they're hidden. You just don't use that. And don't use the menu when you're using combat groups. Anyway, I can just click these on and off. And I can also just turn back on these guys or play around with the control click, shift click on the visibility button. Confusing, but it's very handy to do. Let's see what else. Next option. So that covers the place in active combat groups. I also turn that on in my games. It's not defaulted because it was a newer option, and for newer options I tend to leave them off. Let's see what else. Host only see active if it's targeted. That's very handy in my crowded games. Okay, so let's say I'm just going to have one guy targeted here. Oh, he's not going to be able to see him. Let's see. The reason I can see things in this client side map is because I own 3 guys and 2 of them have vision. Oh, I can't move him, right? Well, we'll just say he's going to be the targeting one. So he's targeted him. And let's say I have a huge set of map. Sometimes I have a ton of NPCs all fighting each other in different groups, controlled by different players. And even though I have all this turning off and on stuff, I'll have like multiple pages of NPCs visible at once. So I'm going to say it's Rangy's turn. And when I have a whole cluttered mess here in the CT, like pages and pages of stuff, I'll just go ahead and turn this thing on, and it'll just show me who he is and who he has targeted. And as I change turn, right? So as you can see, as I go through, I see only who's targeted and whose turn it is. Very handy to have in crowded environments. Now, what I also do is I usually always in all my games, I drag this over here, drop it down. Now that's off, and then I turn it on, drag it over here, drop it down, and then I edit this, which is always a royal pain because look, you don't see the cursor. Wonderful FGU, right? There it is. It came into view because eventually I got it small enough. Okay, so we're going to say targets off. I don't care what you call it. And then, of course, I edit it and I can't see anything. I'm wondering what's going on. And I'm hitting the backspace key until I can get it back into the screen. And targets on. So what I'll do is I'll just say, okay, off, on, off, on. Very handy for managing large sets of data. Let's see. Players, okay. No map toolbar target friendlies. Okay, you see all this crap up here? There's some additional stuff that you would normally have that basically allows them to cheat. This target friendly units, target enemy units, it lets you target things that aren't even in your vision. So I always have that defaulted to off. Those will not be available in my clients, my players' maps, ever. Let's see what else. No, players only see same faction. Well, as you can see, on off, players are limited to see only what I see so that they don't see things and have to target everything in the map. That means if I set something invisible, if it goes out of line of sight, if the lighting prevents them from seeing it, they don't see it, and I don't have to manage it. It just happens as they play and move through the map. That's the only way I will ever play. I don't understand anybody who doesn't play that way. It's just like cheating to me. Same group. A lot of times, like in SW5e, I'll have a multi-level spaceship with one player running 26 NPCs for me with assistant GM and attacking the ship as a boarding party. And then each player will have their PC or another PC and then about 5 ship personnel NPCs that they're managing. And they'll be running all over the ship. And I will turn this on for sure. And so you can see how same faction, you can control these in a variety of ways. And the default's this. Preserve invisible token settings on startup. There's no reason you wouldn't always have this on. When FGU comes up and you have an invisible token, it will forget it. How nice. Now, sometime they may fix that. I don't know. But at the time of this, you will lose your invisibility token setting when you close the application and come back up. This will preserve it. There's no reason not to always have that on. Set groups with common initiative, menu roles. Carrier has something very similar where it'll ensure that anything that's being carried shares the same initiative. Typically, when you roll initiative, it'll roll for everything, whether you see it or not, right? When you roll it, it's rolling for the entire thing. So if I display everything, that's just me hitting the control twice on visibility. You can see that they all have an initiative rolled. Now, they can share the same initiatives, just by random. But if you have players that have groups of things they're controlling, when it's their turn, you kind of want them to sometimes, not always, roll all their guys at once, so they can just run through their group of guys that they're controlling, and then it goes on to the next group. So what happens is you can set this common initiative so that when you actually roll the initiative, it will ensure that anyone of the same group has the same roll. That way, when they show up here to get a turn, it'll be their same turn, and they'll take it at the same time. It also ensures that these numbers are unique. So if you had 100 things here, right, you would have literally this init number getting up into the hundreds because the number has to be kept unique. That's about it for that. And I usually run that on when I've got groups of things going on, and off when I don't. Set token invisibility when invisibility effect is added or removed from CT. I always play with this on. Let's say the cart is invisible. Right? See, the cart's no longer visible here. It's gone. And that was instantaneous. The cart's actually up here, but he can't see him anymore. So if you go to the cart and you turn off his invisibility, he comes back on. So it's respecting those flags. I think that's all I want to show for now.